Life doesn't wait for your permission to move forward. It simply moves. The question is, will you move with it, or will you get left behind? Let me tell you something important every day. Life posts a simple challenge: get better or get left behind. And the truth is, this challenge is not loud, not dramatic, not shouted from the rooftops. It's quiet, but constant. Most people don't notice until one day they wake up realizing their opportunities have moved on, their habits have trapped them, and their potential has been waiting too long. But you are here because something inside you refuses to settle. You want to grow. You want to rise. You want to stay ahead, not chase from behind. And that's exactly why you must stay until the end of this message. Because today, we're going to talk about how small improvements turn ordinary people into exceptional ones, how discipline rewrites your destiny, and why staying the same is the most dangerous decision you can make. By the end of this speech, you'll know exactly what steps to take to make sure life never passes you by. Growth is not optional. If you're not improving, you're falling behind. That truth sits quietly in the background of every decision we make, every habit we keep, and every opportunity we allow to slip away. Life doesn't pause to let anyone rest. The world moves, people evolve, industries shift, and time keeps pushing us forward whether we're prepared or not. The challenge is simple, but demanding: move forward with intention or drift backward by default. There is no neutral position in personal development because standing still is just another form of decline. The moment you stop stretching, learning, challenging, and upgrading yourself, that moment marks the beginning of falling behind, even if you don't feel it immediately. Growth doesn't announce itself loudly, and decline doesn't either. They both happen quietly, slowly, and steadily. The difference is that one takes you closer to your potential, and the other takes you farther away from it. Most people believe they can stay the same, maintain the same habits, the same skill levels, the same thinking, and still somehow keep up with the pace of life. But the world doesn't work that way. What's enough today becomes outdated tomorrow. What's impressive now becomes average in a few years. What gives you an advantage right now becomes the bare minimum in the future. Skills expire, mindsets get rusty, opportunities rotate, and time rewards the person who keeps improving while slowly closing doors on the one who refuses to change. This is why growth is not a luxury, a hobby, or something to do when it's convenient. It is a necessity. It's as essential as food for the body. Without it, life begins to shrink, opportunities begin to fade, and confidence begins to crumble. Consider any area of life: career, relationships, finances, health, communication, emotional intelligence. Each of these areas requires active investment. If you don't invest in your health, the body deteriorates. If you don't invest in your relationships, they weaken. If you don't invest in your skills, they become irrelevant. Improvement is a principle that applies universally. The reason some people seem to get ahead while others remain stuck has very little to do with luck and everything to do with consistent self-improvement. The person who reads a little more, learns a little more, practices a little more, and takes on a little more responsibility eventually builds an advantage that is hard to compete with. While others stay comfortable, that person keeps stretching. While others repeat the same day for years, that person keeps rewriting their future. Growth requires honesty, the willingness to look at yourself and admit where you're lacking, where you're procrastinating, where you're underperforming, and where you've allowed excuses to replace effort. That honesty can be uncomfortable, which is precisely why many avoid it. But discomfort is the price of progress. Every skill you master, every habit you build, every mindset you upgrade comes from walking willingly into discomfort. Yet the discomfort of growth is temporary, while the discomfort of staying the same is permanent. The pain of discipline lasts for a moment, but the pain of regret lasts much longer. People often think falling behind is something dramatic, something obvious. But it's rarely loud. Falling behind happens quietly. It happens when you skip learning something new because you're tired, when you choose distractions over development, when you postpone plans for tomorrow, forgetting that tomorrow becomes a habit, and that habit becomes your life. It happens when you hold on to old thinking patterns while the world around you evolves. Falling behind is subtle, and that's what makes it dangerous. You rarely see it while it's happening. You only feel it later, when opportunities don't show up the way they used to, when confidence begins to fade, when progress slows down, and when life starts demanding more than you are prepared to give. The people who stay ahead aren't necessarily smarter. They're simply committed to staying in motion. They invest in growth the same way others invest in entertainment. They look at their time as a resource, not something to waste. They see learning as an asset, not a burden. They accept responsibility when something isn't working instead of blaming circumstances. And they understand that every small improvement stacks on top of the last one, creating momentum that eventually becomes unstoppable. They keep adding value to themselves, and because of that, the world keeps adding value to them. The moment you decide to improve even slightly each day, life responds. Doors open that once seemed locked. People begin to notice your discipline, your confidence, your skill. Opportunities that once felt out of reach begin to appear naturally. Growth attracts possibility. It attracts respect. It attracts success. It creates an inner strength that builds over time, an ability to handle challenges, setbacks, pressure, and uncertainty. This inner strength becomes your foundation, something no one else can give you and no circumstance can take away. When you make growth a daily requirement, not an occasional idea, everything changes. Your thinking deepens. Your decision-making improves. Your discipline strengthens. Your perspective expands. You start to see options where you once saw limitations. You start to feel capable where you once felt overwhelmed. You start to believe in yourself at a level that makes others pay attention. Improvement builds identity, and identity drives action. When you view yourself as someone who grows, you naturally seek out challenges instead of avoiding them. You welcome learning instead of resisting it. You value progress instead of comfort. And all of this begins with accepting one truth. You are either getting better or you are getting left behind. There is no middle ground. The world rewards the person who grows because growth makes you valuable. And the more valuable you become, the more life expands to meet that value. Growth is the great separator. It distinguishes those who rise from those who remain the same. It's not about being perfect. It's about being better than yesterday. The gap between who you are and who you could be is closed one small improvement at a time. Growth is always available, always possible, and always rewarded. Small, consistent improvements compound into extraordinary results. This is one of life's most reliable principles, yet one of the least understood. People often look for dramatic breakthroughs, overnight success, or sudden transformations, forgetting that real success rarely arrives in a single moment. It builds quietly, layer by layer, habit by habit, choice by choice. The person who achieves something remarkable is almost never the person who changed everything at once, but the one who changed a little bit each day. The power of compounding is invisible in the beginning, subtle in the middle, and undeniable in the end. It works for finances, for skills, for confidence, for discipline, and for personal development. When you improve slightly each day, the results may seem small at first, but over time they expand into something far greater than you imagined. Most people underestimate the value of small improvements because they seem too simple to matter. Reading for 10 minutes doesn't feel like a big achievement. Practicing a skill for 15 minutes doesn't feel life-changing. Choosing a healthier meal doesn't feel transformative. Writing a paragraph doesn't feel like becoming an author. Saving a small amount of money doesn't feel like building wealth. Because the reward isn't immediate, people dismiss the action. But small actions repeated consistently create irreversible momentum. What seems insignificant in the moment becomes powerful when compounded over months and years. Growth follows the same rule as interest. It multiplies, accelerates, and expands when you keep adding to it. Think about the person who decides to read just 10 pages a day. 10 pages don't feel like much. It's easy to ignore, easy to skip, easy to say, "I'll do it tomorrow." But 10 pages a day becomes 300 pages in a month. 300 pages become thousands of pages in a year. Thousands of pages become dozens of books. And dozens of books become a completely different level of thinking, awareness, vocabulary, perspective, and intelligence. The small daily effort transforms into a massive intellectual advantage. Meanwhile, the person who reads nothing may not feel the loss after one day, or even 1 month, but years later, the gap between the two individuals is enormous. The same is true for skills. The person who practices speaking for 5 minutes a day, writing for 10 minutes, or exercising for 15 minutes, slowly becomes someone entirely different from the person who practices nothing. Small improvements don't just add up, they multiply. Improvement increases confidence, and confidence increases improvement. Each bit of progress reinforces the next. Every small win builds belief, and belief pushes you toward bigger wins. This cycle continues until the person you've become is dramatically more capable than the person you started as. One reason people struggle to be consistent is because they chase perfection instead of progress. They believe that if they can't make big changes, there's no point in making small ones. But perfection is the enemy of growth. Waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect plan creates stagnation. Small improvements remove the pressure to be perfect. They allow you to build skills gradually. They allow you to stay in motion. They allow you to bypass overwhelm and focus on what you can do right now. Consistency beats intensity every time because intensity is temporary while consistency is sustainable. People quit too soon because they expect results too quickly. They lift weights for a week and see no difference. They practice a skill for a month and still feel awkward. They save money for a few days and see nothing change. So they assume it isn't working. But compounding doesn't reveal itself early. The beginning is always slow. The early stages always feel unrewarding. The results are hidden, quietly forming beneath the surface. And most people give up right before the curve begins to rise. They miss the breakthrough because they aren't patient enough to get to it. Compounding requires patience, consistency, and faith in the process. When you keep showing up, even when progress feels invisible, you're laying the foundation for exponential growth. The person who commits to steady improvement will always surpass the person who waits for the perfect opportunity or relies on bursts of motivation. Motivation fades. Inspiration fades. But habits remain. And habits are what shape extraordinary outcomes. Consider someone learning a new language. The first few weeks feel frustrating. Everything sounds unfamiliar. Progress seems slow. But a few words a day, a few sentences a day, a few minutes of practice start stacking. After months, the improvement becomes noticeable. After a year, the transformation is undeniable. The small, daily steps create fluency that would have never been reached through occasional bursts of effort. The same applies to every meaningful skill: public speaking, writing, leadership, communication, fitness, financial discipline, or creative ability. Small improvements also change identity. When you do something consistently, even in small amounts, you begin to view yourself differently. You're no longer someone who tries, you're someone who follows through. You're no longer someone who avoids, you're someone who grows. Identity shapes behavior. When you see yourself as someone who improves, you naturally seek more opportunities to improve. The small steps feed your self-image, and your self-image fuels bigger steps. This loop creates unstoppable long-term success. The beauty of small improvements is that they are available to everyone. You don't need extraordinary talent, perfect conditions, or huge resources. You just need the willingness to start small and stay consistent. You need to show up even when the results aren't visible. You need to trust that today's effort will become tomorrow's strength. When you focus on improving slightly each day, you eliminate the pressure to make huge changes all at once. Instead, you build momentum naturally. You build confidence slowly. You build expertise gradually. And each step strengthens your ability to take the next one. Extraordinary results don't come from extraordinary effort. They come from ordinary effort, repeated over an extraordinary period of time. The greatness you admire in others is often the result of years of disciplined, consistent improvement that no one saw. What looks impressive now started with small steps taken long before anyone was watching, and the same principle applies to you. Small, steady improvements will lead you to outcomes that once felt out of reach. Every small step forward shifts your future in a significant direction. Every small act of discipline changes who you are becoming. Every small decision compounds into something large over time. Life rewards the person who takes responsibility, learns, and invests in personal development because responsibility creates direction, learning creates capacity, and personal development creates value. These three forces work together to shape who you become and what you can achieve. When you take responsibility for your life, you stop waiting for circumstances to change and start changing yourself. When you choose to learn, you upgrade the tools you use to navigate challenges. When you invest in your development, you become someone capable of creating opportunities rather than waiting for them. Together, these choices separate those who rise from those who remain stuck. Taking responsibility is the first step because without it, nothing else begins. Responsibility means accepting that where you are today may not be your fault, but it is your responsibility to change it. It means refusing to blame circumstances, parents, the economy, luck, or timing for your position in life. The moment you blame something external, you give away your power. The moment you take responsibility, you reclaim it. Responsibility is the realization that you have the ability to shape your own direction, your own mindset, your own habits, and ultimately your own future. It doesn't promise an easy path, but it guarantees a path. People who embrace responsibility move differently. They act with intention. They make choices aligned with their goals. They respond to problems with solutions instead of excuses. And because they take ownership, life begins to trust them with more. Learning is the second piece, and it is the fuel that allows responsibility to produce results. You can take responsibility for your life, but without knowledge, guidance, or new skills, you limit your ability to move forward. Learning is how you expand your capacity to solve problems, adapt to change, and take advantage of opportunities. The world is constantly evolving, and the person who refuses to learn slowly becomes outdated, but the person who keeps learning stays relevant, capable, and prepared. Learning widens your perspective. It shows you possibilities you didn't know existed. It gives you strategies that shorten the distance between you and your goals. It teaches you how to handle challenges that would have overwhelmed you before. Every new skill you develop becomes a tool you can use for the rest of your life. Every new insight becomes part of the foundation on which your future stands. Learning also builds confidence. When you understand more, you fear less. Most fears come from uncertainty. Most insecurity comes from inexperience. Knowledge reduces uncertainty, and experience reduces insecurity. The more you learn, the more you believe in your ability to handle whatever comes next. This confidence is not arrogance. It is earned security. It is the kind of confidence that comes from developing yourself to a point where you no longer fear challenges because you have built yourself into someone who can face them. Personal development is the third component, and it ties everything together. Personal development is not just learning. It is applying what you learn. It is developing discipline, habits, emotional strength, clarity, focus, communication, and resilience. It is intentionally shaping your character and capabilities. Personal development is the internal work that creates external results. It is the effort of improving not just what you do, but who you are. When you invest in personal development, you make yourself more valuable in every area of life. Not valuable in a material sense, but valuable in your abilities, your mindset, your contribution, your influence, and your reliability. People who invest in personal development become the kind of people others trust. They become the kind of people opportunities are drawn to. They become the kind of people who are capable of handling responsibility at a higher level. Personal development builds discipline, and discipline creates consistency. Consistency creates momentum. Momentum creates progress, and progress leads to fulfillment. Every step of personal development strengthens the foundation you stand on. You begin to see the connection between your habits and your outcomes. You begin to understand how your thinking shapes your behavior and how your behavior shapes your life. Life rewards the person who grows because growth makes you someone who can handle more. People often want more success, more opportunities, more money, more recognition, more freedom, but they rarely ask whether they have become someone capable of maintaining those things. Without growth, opportunities become burdens. Without growth, success becomes temporary. Without growth, challenges become overwhelming. But when you invest in your personal development, you become someone who can sustain progress. You become someone who can adapt, someone who can think clearly, someone who can make strong decisions, someone who can lead, someone who can contribute, and someone who can thrive under pressure. Responsibility learning and personal development work like a cycle. Responsibility pushes you to seek improvement. Learning provides the direction for improvement. Personal development transforms learning into results. This cycle repeats, building a stronger, wiser, more capable version of you with each turn. Life responds to this cycle by opening new doors because life always aligns with the person you become, not the person you wish to be. When you invest in yourself, you signal to life that you are ready for more. You signal that you can be trusted with more. Growth attracts opportunity because growth creates competence and competence creates influence. People who avoid responsibility, avoid learning, and avoid personal development often feel stuck because they haven't positioned themselves for progress. They wait for change instead of creating it. They hope for improvement instead of becoming the source of improvement. But the person who embraces growth becomes their own solution. They become proactive instead of reactive. They become stronger than their circumstances. They become capable of shaping their own direction instead of being pulled by the direction of others. Life rewards growth because growth increases your ability to serve, contribute, decide, lead, create, and elevate yourself and others. Growth transforms your potential into capability. It turns desire into discipline. It turns confusion into clarity. It turns struggle into strength. Growth is not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming better equipped for the challenges and opportunities ahead. And as you continue to take responsibility, continue to learn, and continue to invest in personal development, your capacity expands and your value deepens.